Almost 125 years ago, in 1893, a young Indian sage, Swami Vivekananda, stood right here in Chicago addressing an audience of 7,000. Swami Vivekananda was here to address the first parliament of world's religions. He brought with him the Indian civilizational ideas of inclusion and tolerance, ideas that are still work in progress. That summer in 1893, he met a wealthy American called John D. Rockefeller. There are different accounts of how this meeting went, but one thing is clear. Vivekananda intrigued and vexed John with his view that the money John had accumulated was not his, that he was just a channel, a trustee, and that his real duty was to use that money for the good of the society. John precipitously left that meeting, but he showed back a week later, unannounced, walked into Vivekananda's study and placed a document on his desk. The document had John's philanthropic plans and the plans to give a big sum of money to a large public institution. So today in Chicago, I can't help but feel solemn that right here in that fruitous summer of 1893, possibly capital met purpose. That is why we're here. We're here because we all believe that capital has a higher purpose. We're all here because we believe that our job is incomplete until 3 billion of our brothers and sisters still live in abject poverty. We all believe that sustainable market solutions can solve many of these problems at scale. And we all believe that there's irrefutable evidence that impact investment works. I believe in this despite a not so successful impact venture of my own. In 2006, I was quitting WNS, an outsourcing company I'd helped build and list on New York Stock Exchange. One thing WNS taught me was India's about to have a big demographic crisis. We were a large company, 17,000 people when we left, and we were hiring 800 people a month to just backfill attrition and provide for growth. It's over 10 years back, so I can tell you we never met our targets. The city youth did not want these jobs, which paid modestly and had awkward working hours. The rural, semi-urban youth, they just did not have communication skills, soft skills, problem-solving skills, despite having academic qualifications to do these jobs. I pioneered this idea of employability education. We initially did well, ramping up to 20,000 learners every year, won every possible honor, including the one I'm very proud about, a $100,000 McNulty Prize. And when the McNulty team came calling in India for due diligence, visiting villages and homes of these kids, I was in for another insight. I had started the initiative in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, one of the most troubled regions in India. And the McNulty team found in a village outside Jammu that tens of children had followed a guy called Rahul into the outsourcing sector in Gurgaon, where we were based. We had met Rahul when we were recruiting for our first batch, and so I remember him distinctly. He was in early 20s, a graduate from a government college, unemployed, tentative about his future. His family earned $150 a month. His father was a small shopkeeper. We had to give him scholarships so he could sign up for the 3-month training program where we taught him English language, voice accent skills, customer service, tech support, and soon he won a placement with IBM. And lo and behold, within a year, he was the highest paid youth in his whole village. Naturally, youth in droves started following him into Gurgaon, into this training. And McNulty team taught us that sometimes unknowingly our actions can change a whole village and not just one life. Aspire did not scale by India's standard despite training 65,000 people when I left it to achieve scale, that India would deem successful. But every time I meet a Rahul, every time I shake their hands and they hold it tightly, long enough, giving me that glance of hope, I believe that we've had impact, and you can sense it. And if you've ever held those hands, and if you've ever had those hugs, you would believe, as I do, that when capital meets purpose, there is impact. Now, we're not building anything ordinary. We're building an extraordinary impact economy. But it may appear to all of you a little quaint that in whose name we organize everything, we seldom have them in the room, the beneficiaries. And if you were to ask yourself, what if they were to be here? What if they were to make a case for themselves why you should focus on them? What might they tell you? Now, I can tell you this, they are now going to make an emotional pitch. They're going to tell you, build this impact economy on robust principles of demand, supply, not just morality. They will tell you, focus on them, innovate for them, produce for them, not because they are half the planet, but because they make good customers. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about this for a moment, that poor make good customers. Let me give you a few examples. 40 listed public banks in India have non-performing advances, NPAs, at 4.5%. These are the loans we extend to our millionaires and billionaires. The stressed assets of our banking system are higher at 10%. In comparison, our microfinance sector, which lends to our poor, has default rate of 1%. Ladies and gentlemen, poor make good customers. Dharavi in Mumbai is possibly the world's largest, most densely populated slum. 700,000 people, 435 acres. But it has 5,000 businesses and 15,000 single-room factories. The last time they estimated the slum economy, it was over $1 billion. The poor, my friends, make good customers. And they are the ones changing the perception. We often give ourselves too much credit for our entrepreneurial ability, our investor ability to see and seize opportunities. But let me tell you how. In 2010, when India's first microfinance company, SKS, listed, successfully, they were lampooned for profiteering from the poor. They were called loan sharks. Politicians rushed in to talk for the poor. A crisis followed. Central bank rushed in to regulate interest. Many investors wrote off their money. Vikram Akula, the CEO of SKS, lost his job. Well, he and I can have many drinks talking about this first mover advantage. But in the last 12 months, we have had 3 listings of microfinance companies, Ujjivan and Equitas, and just last fortnight, AU Financials, which listed as AU Bank. They all had net profits after taxes of over 20%. Their founders were not disparaged. They were hailed as servant leaders. They were celebrated in the press. In these 7 years, the perception of the impact sector in India has changed, and I know it's changing around the world. We have irrefutable evidence that impact investment is working. I'd asked an Indian research firm called Markets and Markets to size this market for the sake of this conference. And here's what we found. That the sector is growing, has grown in just in the last 5 years at 29% compounded annual growth rate, and that at 17%, 17.4 to be precise, we're going to cross $300 billion by 2020. We're going to double the sector. We also found that affordable housing is and will remain the largest sector. Clean energy, agriculture, healthcare, financial inclusion are all amongst the top leaders. But housing is going to continue leading the pack till 2020. On financial returns, as the CEO of Impact Investors Council, we had McKinsey do some research last year. And here's what we found. The returns were attractive. Indian investors across 48 exits across 5 years from 2010 to 15 delivered 10% IRR in dollar-denominated terms. But of these exits, if you looked at the top decile, they delivered 34% IRR. Aren't these market returns? Ladies and gentlemen, it's very clear. You're all building and fueling a truly inclusive impact economy, and that's the reason you should all be proud, and that's the reason we should all be celebrating. Arise, awake, and stop not until your goal is reached. That's what Swami Vivekananda used to say. And those of you who are new to GSG and wonder, who are we and how will we help impact investment reach our goals? Let me give you a quick flashback. We were set up in 2015 as the successor to the very famous Impact Investment GA Task Force. Sir Ronald Cohen, who chaired that very effective task force, made sure that the task force did a lot more than deliver just great research and great recommendations. That task force seeded a movement. In 2005, as we were starting, we had 8 NABs already getting into being. Today, we have 14 NABs that you see, whose flags you see right here. Tomorrow, we're going to admit 2 more. This would not have been possible if all of you had not joined this movement. And I want to, at this point in time, definitely thank everyone who's supported us, not just our NABs, but all the philanthropic organizations which have fueled this movement. I want to especially thank Ford Foundation, I want to thank MacArthur Foundation, Omidyar Network, Bertelsmann Foundation, Gulbenkian Foundation, all of whom have been making sure that we all can meet here and continue this movement year after year. So what's our goal? We have 3 big priorities. Me and my team are going to make sure that we are looking at, let me see, these 3 big goals, and I'm trying to see how we can go back a slide. There we are. I needed this. Thank you. Goal number 1, we're going to make sure that GSG member countries move up from 15 to 30 by 2020. I estimated that we're touching 500 million poor around the world, 1 of every 6. By 2020, we want to make sure we can make this 1 billion, 1 of every 3. And we want to work hard with all of you to enable that our market grows from $150-odd billion now to $300 billion plus by 2020. That's our agenda, and I want to invite all of you to help make this movement happen. And there are multiple ways. On Wednesday, our executive board is going to launch 6 working groups. Beyond impact investing, wholesalers, we're going to look at financial instruments, we're going to look at how to engage retail investors, and these are the kind of initiatives all of you through your NABs can engage with. When you engage with us in that way, that's how we drive change. Those of you who think about new institutions, it has been one of GSG's goals to help new wholesalers come into being. Many of you may have heard the story of how Ronnie and Nick founded Big Society Capital. Cliff Pryor, the current CEO of BSC, is right here. As GSG got this idea cascaded across the world, look what happened. Rosemary in Australia is building a new wholesaler in public-private partnership. They're going to start off with 300 million initial capital. Shuichi Ono and Masataka Uo here from Japan, they have convinced their government to allow dormant accounts to be used and release $500 million every year for this new wholesaler. Our Portuguese NAB worked with all its stakeholders, and they already have established a new wholesaler with $150 million. That's how GSG works with its NABs to drive real change. come partner with us. Just like the studies we are doing with markets and others, we are trying to find ways to partner with all of you. Just last fortnight, we tied up with Bridges Impact Plus, and Clara should be here, who leads that, to make sure that we have a glossary, definitions, we have a view of how impact management should happen, which we can cascade to our entire network. These will be the ways you're going to partner with us. We partnered with Impact Alpha and with Andy, and we have programs now, and you're going to hear about some of those honors programs a little later over this event. Finally, I do want to thank you all for being here. As you heard, both from Julie and from Tracy, today, right here, right now, you're a formidable force. 560 people from 43 different countries. We're going to make sure that this diversity continues over the next 2 days into your rooms, because we have asked 120 different discussion leaders from 21 different countries to make sure we can talk about how we're going to drive this revolution. As I conclude, I wonder if you also think, as I often do, why do all of us really commit ourselves to something like this? Whether it's entrepreneurially, occupationally, or our lives, why do we commit ourselves to all of this? And as I thought about this, I felt only Aristotle could answer that. And he would remind me, if he was here, man is a social animal. And when you reimagine a just, equitable society, don't think you're doing it for them. No, not for the beneficiaries. We're doing it for us. He would tell us that he's not surprised that humanity measures its honor in a new currency, which is impact. Is it not so that the greatest leaders of our times have committed their second innings, if not their first, always to philanthropy and building the quintessential good society? We do it for ourselves. But we must believe it more than ever, single-mindedly, and want to deliver our vision collectively, almost desperately. I would like to end with this little story from Swami Vivekananda's life. When he was young, as a teenager, he left his home to join a Hindu monk order, now at what is called Belur Mutt outside of Kolkata. As a young teenager, he would hanker his mentor, Ramakrishna Paramhans, to say, when will I meet the goddess? When will I meet the God? So obsessed was he in his pursuit of finding God and the truth that he forgot about the means. One day, Ramakrishna Paramhans decides to teach him a little lesson. As young Vivekananda goes to bathe in a river, the Guru presses his head down into the river, submerging him and almost suffocating him. When the Guru let go his hand, out pops young Swami Vivekananda, bewildered, staring at his Guru as to what happened. And Guru reminds him, when you want to meet Goddess Kali as desperately as you wanted that breath, you will find her. Ronnie has believed in this mission for the last 15 years single-mindedly. I know all of you here in this room share this resolve. I, on my part, can tell you that I'll be committed to making sure we can collectively move our agenda forward to the 3 top objectives we've set for ourselves. And I know that together, and only together, we will all help capital find its highest purpose. Thank you. Thank you.